Paul Golden.
3.
Take 3.
Okay, induction. I mean, a common expression some women have said to me is that the hospital's freaking them out with too many fears. And they are happy to take responsibility for their choices, their decisions, and their pregnancy. And induction is overused. We can look at the statistics, the World Health Organization recommendations are far fewer, inductions far fewer caesareans than we're seeing. Why are we seeing the rapid increase of induction, the rapid increase of caesarean? Some of them are very necessary, but many of them are just fear and knee-jerk responses. Something bad happened, we need to do this. We've had experience in this situation, like your baby's now 41 weeks, your baby's growing on the small side of things, or your baby's growing on the large side of things, or whatever reason, we think we need to get the baby out. There's a false belief in the special care baby units, the neonatal intensive cares can fix anything and everything. This is not what a baby needs. What the baby needs is the mother, and they need to birth in a process that's physiological and enhancing the ability for the baby to adapt to life outside the womb, like breathing. So induction massively interrupts all this process. It's a complex thing, it's unpredictable, and as far as possible, where a woman doesn't need it, she shouldn't have it.
Great. And it's, you said before that was really good about induction is because it's started with control, you think you have control.
Yeah. Induction can run away from the control. You start a process, you think you've got control, you put a pessary in or however you start the contractions, and something unpredictable will happen in many, many cases. And those women often say, had I known that could have happened, I would not have chosen the induction. Of course, there's no way of knowing how they're going to respond to the effects of induction. So you have to be very careful, and just because a hospital is saying, we need to do this, what do you need? What does your baby need? That's different from what the hospital needs. We need to ask ourselves these questions and to listen to the body, listen to the baby. In fact, hospitals, we could listen to the women more, but we don't have time.
What my experience or my understanding of an induction is that it brings on contractions very hard. So it means it's actually a more painful process for the woman.
There is this kind of wave-like motion of contractions, and they can be much more aggressive when they actually come from the induction. So instead of a slow, gradual build-up and the body is adapting and producing some natural hormones and painkillers, if it's bang, straight into powerful aggressive contractions that shock a woman, she's not responding with her natural painkillers, and she's much more fearful often, quite often alarmed at what's happening to her body beyond her control. It feels something outside of her. So then she's more likely to want pain relief. And if she had a natural process of labour beginning gently and slowly, she would be managing very differently. So having the pain relief takes her down another cascade. She's on the bed, she's having monitoring, she's not mobilising, she's inactive instead of active, she's passive instead of active. She needs to move. And once she's on the bed, it's very difficult, except possibly going to the bathroom. The woman will stay on the bed, the baby is getting in a fixed position and getting stuck more often. And these babies require help, and these births require help that would not have been needed if the woman had not had the induction.
Let's talk about monitoring and mobility.
Women could move with monitoring. They could stand up with the straps around their belly, listening to the baby's heartbeat, but why have the monitor on at all? The research is not supportive of this intervention. And
okay, that's too much. The research is not supportive of this. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So how can we put that in a bit more? Research shows this is not helpful, or just...
There's no evidence to show that being monitored is safer than not being monitored in general. And we overuse monitoring, and we over-focus on it, and we're overly fearful about our responsibilities to do monitoring. It's very simple. A woman can say no thank you to monitoring, and she can say how she would like to be monitored. So she could have somebody listening just with their ear and the little trumpet, the pinard, however often is agreed with the woman. We could use the little microphone, the sonic aid, and listen. This can even be used underwater if a woman agrees, and she comes to the midwife or the doctor for them to reach and listen to. When a woman is on a bed, people can walk up to her, strap a monitor on, and she feels she cannot get off. She feels she has no choice. Women always have choices in childbirth. They can get off the bed. Women can say no thank you to any intervention, including the monitoring.
We don't know that. Try to not look around. That's it. I know it looks weird, but for me it looks...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. My grandmother always said to me, you've got to walk the boards when you're pregnant. In other words, keep active.
Yeah. That's a great expression that grandmothers use, saying you've got to walk the boards, meaning you've got to keep active, get off the bed, use your hips, your pelvis. So walking is one of the best things. Plus resting when a woman needs to, but perhaps on her side rather than on her back. But definitely being active gets good results with birthing.
What is the problem with lying on your back?
Okay, the coccyx and the whole sacrum is
so
curved.
You're looking at me?
Is this okay?
Yeah.
The coccyx is curved and the sacrum is restricting the outlet for the baby to come down. There's no gravity. Whereas a woman getting off the bed has gravity. Her pelvis naturally opens, the gap between the pubic bone at the front and the coccyx and the sacrum at the back. This gap can increase dramatically, up to 30% more, and it will close 30% when the woman is laying on her back. So what animal do we know ever see a cat or a dog or any other mammal giving birth on their back? It's only humans, because our brain is interfering with birth too much.
Great. So the idea of the monitoring, where a woman's got a bank, or midwives have a bank of, let's talk about the mechanising of birth. Okay.
It's almost, you sometimes see security cameras linked up to display monitors, and you can go in a maternity unit throughout the UK and many other places and find a bank of monitors, not with cameras on the women, but with the machinery tracing the baby's heartbeat. So this surveillance is unnecessary interference often, where somebody in another room will come into the birthing room and say, hey, what's happening? So the idea is very good, that it can increase safety. What it's doing is increasing fear. And surveillance, observation of somebody makes them behave differently. Even the midwives in the room are behaving differently, knowing that they're being observed, with the monitor being watched remotely by other people. And it's all recorded electronically for litigation. And really they're using it for defensive litigation to show that they did reasonable things. This is really interfering in the birth process, to be thinking all the time about litigation. And yet if we don't, hospitals feel wide open for court cases against them, and they can't afford the payments.
What is the, how much in a hospital is guided by fear of litigation, and how much is guided by following gut instinct and doing your best?
Most actions in the hospital are guided by fear. Fear in society, fear in hospitals, fear of litigation, of having not done enough or done something wrong. So most clinicians, when they're writing, they're justifying. They're not being intuitive. Midwives or clinicians working in remote small units or in home birth settings are a lot freer to trust their intuition, to listen to their intuition, to check with the woman what she wants and doesn't want. In a hospital, they're much more constrained, and some people can be working intuitively, but it's a minority. You'd be very lucky on a good day to get the good clinicians who are trusting their instincts and can facilitate a beautiful birth. It does happen, but we've got so much fear and control, it's making it less often that we can allow intuition and listening to the bodies to guide us in birthing.
So you said in the kitchen about people are stopping, they're not looking at the baby anymore, they're looking at the machinery and that trust. Can you summarise that?
Yeah, where's the baby in all this? We take care of the mother's needs sometimes. She might agree to an induction. Is this baby in the right position? So if we start an induction process and the baby is not in a good position, we're just making it worse. If we waited a day or two or a week or however long is reasonable and necessary for the baby, and the baby comes into a better position, then that birth will go better, and the experience for the mother and baby is safer, as well as in every other way better. But by doing an induction when the baby's not in a good position, it's just making problems, and we're not listening with our hands to what is the baby's position. Is the baby ready?
We don't seem to be following nature at all. Why do we think that we know better?
We've got a reliance on technology, and it can be a useful backup to the very intelligent human being And our intelligence is in our hands, in our gut, in our instincts, in our heart, as well as in our head. So we don't want everything to be rational. It has to feel right. That's a very simple question. Does it feel right? If women could ask themselves, does this feel right? Does this feel right for my baby? Not just for themselves. They will guide themselves. If the clinicians are asking themselves, does this feel right? And they are getting an answer, no, it doesn't, but I will persist anyway. We can't be surprised when the outcomes are negative or difficult, like, I'm not sure what to say, injured babies, dead babies, not even that, just traumatic births happen because it didn't feel right and we persisted anyway.
How many births would you say are traumatic? I'm not talking about percentages.
That's all right, okay.
But, like in general.
Perception. Whether a birth is traumatic or not is very much down to perception. I've been at a birth I thought was amazing and wonderful, the mother's third baby, and she will describe that as the most horrific birth she had out of her 3 babies being born. Another birth, I can see a woman who's having a very traumatic birth, but she has some good music played, she has some good eye contact, some good breathing techniques, and she's feeling calm and serene, even when she's had, in this case, 2 episiotomies, 2 junior doctors making quite a hash of the birth, and her perception is that was a good birth. She cries tears of happiness at her birth. It's all perception. And we can help create this perception when the woman feels she has autonomy. She is in control of her body, and she's in control of her decisions, and then she has a greater satisfaction. So we can have one woman has a good birth and is satisfied that she participated in her choices. Another woman had things done to her, still has a good birth, in my judgment, or somebody else's judgment, but she has to live for the rest of her life with a feeling of trauma. And it may take her years, it may negatively impact on her relationship with the baby and with herself. Because everything we do with others is to do with ourselves. So if she's feeling depressed or disassociated, unhappy with her decisions, this can come out in her family life and in her intimate relationship with her partner. And he may feel that he failed to protect her from trauma and events that happened, things he might have thought were okay, or he may have thought they were not okay, but he could feel powerless how to help her. And if he overly represents her, he might seem to be aggressive and then be excluded. So it's a very difficult role for the partners. The partners themselves can have post-traumatic stress or feel traumatized by the experience, and there's less communication networks for men to share and talk about this. There is a man, midwife Mark Harris, who talks about birthing for blokes. So he's wonderful at focus on this dimension of men, how they support their partners, how they feel about it afterwards. And in fact, by preparing themselves, they can often have a greater, more positive perception of birth and really support their partners.
If you were a woman, where would you give birth?
In nature.
Okay, say that. If I were a woman.
If I were a woman, I would give birth in nature. Unobserved, uninterrupted, trusting the physiological process. I might remotely know what was available in case it was needed, but by focusing so much on the fear and what might be needed in emergency, having that big red button to press in case of any panic, the closer we are to the panic button, the more we're going to use it. And the further away, the more we trust. I would trust birth. I would trust the body. I would trust the physiological process of birth. I trust my baby.
You mentioned yesterday that some women have given birth, were they in a coma? Or not dead, but some,
Yeah.
but...
The physiological process of birth means that even if you were asleep, if you were in a coma, the uterus could push the baby out. So women do not need usually to do active, coached pushing, holding their breath and screwing their face up and putting all this energy into pushing down. That generally deprives the baby of oxygen. However, there can be times when it's useful. If the baby's heartbeat's gone down and it's very visible, the baby's almost being born, sometimes people have used this coach pushing and it's achieved good results. But generally it was used too much, and it still is. In some countries it's their norm. Some clinicians in this country, the UK, it's also their norm. And so why should individuals perpetuate the same kind of birth? It's down to the woman being unique and individual and needs to birth how she needs to. If you're flat on your back, you may more likely be having coached pushing. If you're squatting or upright in any position on all fours, your body is going to coach you. Women can listen to their bodies to guide them with pushing. It's instinctive. You cannot not push when your body is making you push. Whereas coached pushing is a very different thing.
When you see